Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2022 One Sustainability Conference, our annual global sustainability event. We now have the pleasure to welcome Lydia Alexandra Renders, CEO of Willow Investments. Alexandra will tell us more about Beyond ESG and SRI. Is it time for caring capitalism? We're very anxious to hear what you're going to say about that, Alexandra. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me to participate. So Beyond ESG SRI, choosing caring capitalism. When I first went with this title, I said, is it time for caring capitalism? And now I just feel like it's time to choose caring capitalism, but that's my take. So I'd like to share why I feel this way with all of you today. So I will do our disclaimer. The material in this presentation has been prepared by ADCM, DBA Willow, and is a general background about Willow's activities current at the time of this presentation. The information is given in summary form and does not purport to be complete. Information in this presentation should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security or investment. Neither the information nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes an offer or a solicitation to offer or buy or sell any security. Before acting on any information, you should seek the independent advice of your financial advisor. All securities and financial products involve risk. While due care has been used in the preparation of this presentation, the information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Forecasts and hypothetical examples are subject to uncertainty and contingencies outside of Willow's control. Past performance is not a reliable indication of future performance. So I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. And I know so many of us are working so hard to be the change we want to see, and we are all doing our best. And you know, that I think so much of us desire true change. And I can't help but confess that for all the effort put forth for ESG, SRI, and to become more conscious in capitalism, I have to say I've seen conditions for our human family go from bad to worse over these years. And that simply being an ESG, SRI manager for me has not been the answer I had hoped for. So this has been on my mind for a while. And over the past few years, I found myself questioning why economic and political policy just continues to compound one flaw after another, and has created wider gaps between those who have and those who do not, combined with the consolidation of power that has grown exponentially over the years, weakening of individual rights, more violence, more civil unrest, and creating more disenfranchised workers. I've often felt something is awry. What is going on? And it seems to me that somehow capitalism has run amok, and it seems even worse since we've given companies the same rights, constitutional rights as individuals. So I know at the core, for me, I want equality. I want clean air. I want clean water. I want all the same things for all humans. And as a matter of disclosure, I live off the grid, or I do not consume any fossil fuel in my home and have not since 2011. And I want this for everyone. And I know that it's possible because I do this here in the Berkshires. So what I've found over the years is when policy is put forth without foresight on how it affects the whole, this is where we run into some problems. And we could see this right now. So you see greater groups of people falling into poverty. You see, let's just take, for example, what's happening over in Europe and Germany, where they've closed down many of their nuclear power plants, which is clean, zero carbon emissions. Now, admittedly, some other issues, but zero carbon emissions in favor of a gas pipeline with a lot of, in place of that. So now you see an issue in Germany where for the average person, the cost to heat their homes has gone up exponentially. So it was a policy that came in place without thinking of the whole effect of what is happening here. So I was curious, what is driving this? What is this all about? And of course, there's some current concern that I have that capitalism in its current trajectory isn't in the right place. So what I did for me personally, as I said, I need to set out and find out what true change is really needed. And the answer was so simple to me, yet very hard for me to create, and actually seemed a little bit idealistic. I found no examples, and I knew it had to be a complete change in mindset and actions, right? So one of the things at the core that I realize is that companies are just simply a collective group of people who are expected to behave in a certain way. This is one point. But companies are made up of human beings. Human beings are not made up of the institutions. And inherent in our nature as a human being is to have feelings and is to have needs. And when we create companies devoid of this recognition, when we create policies devoid of this recognition, then this is part of what I think is the issue in capitalism today. So I believe without a dramatic cultural change in business over the next several decades will be fraught with a lot of turmoil and a lot of turnover. We're already seeing the net effects of this with employee satisfaction at an all-time low. We see a generation that lacks trust in institutions and leaderships. We see more people who desire meaningful employment and a general deterioration in our society. And I think it's now time for companies to step up as leaders for true change, not just change that are based on quotas that sit outside of ourselves. And the problem is if we set up companies that have values that created from empty words for marketing purposes, for example, or if they're greenwashing or what have you, if they are not lived and are essentially lies, then these are false pretenses that will lead to bitter employees, unengaged employees, and people can feel the lie. So what I needed to do is I said, well, how can I operate ESG SRI, which is a little bit frustrating knowing this. What can I do personally? What can I do to make this change? So as I started to question what was caring capitalism to me, for me, it's coming from a word, a feeling, a place that we all want, but are afraid to have, and that is love. Simply put, care for yourself, me, and for another, rather than the false pretenses of quotas that sit outside of me, policy that doesn't necessarily consider the whole, or anything outside of ourselves. Truly, I wanted a drive towards a better good within me and within each of us. So how can I do that? I only have a small company, and certainly I couldn't influence the larger companies. I started with me as a human and as a leader. That's where I had to begin. So I can only control my feelings, my thoughts, my actions to create whatever outcome I want to do. And I hope in doing so that others will follow. The other thing is all humans want to experience love and acceptance, whether we deny it or not. This is the truth. And I wanted to be an ambassador for change, a living example of what an investment organization should be like. And I also wanted to be a leader for positive change and an alchemist, really in the financial world, to operate, I guess, let's say it, one of spirit, one of love, something a little different. So let me just talk to you a little bit about how I went about doing that. And again, my feeling is our industry is ripe for this change. It's ripe for a deeper dive into into yourself as a leader to see how you can show up in your world. I am a data geek, so I have all kinds of data in here and charts, but this isn't what this is about today. I find this interesting. I don't know if any of you saw this in Time magazine today. China won't stop using fossil fuels until clean sources can provide enough energy security. This is what I'm talking about. Policy is making sure these types of things are in place. So what is conscious capitalism? Okay. Obviously, so many of us are working in this, and it's a solution stemming from the rational mind. Like, okay, we need to do something to stop, the ice caps from melting and things like this. It's basically a ecosystem in business. So from what I see, caring capitalism is a solution stemming from the heart. So the higher mind, if you will. The higher mind to me is the heart. So conscious capitalism is, and it, don't get me wrong, I know we all want something good. We wouldn't be, I think, seeking and looking for answers in ESG, SRI if we weren't. But it's of the mind, and caring capitalism is of the heart. It's, my business is a force for good, conscious capitalism. My loving capacity is a force for good. So this is like a change actually in philosophy in this, or being, and this doesn't just come easily. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey, how I got there. Impact of my business on the whole system and the community. This is really important. The impact of my love on the whole system and the community. I know this might seem idealistic, but we actually put in leadership competencies based on love. So people cannot become leaders in this company unless they actually show that they have the capacity to love and care for the other employees in the company. Conscious capital, redistributing capital differently. Again, important. How do I redistribute my love differently? This is how I operated. Capital as a universal force for good. Love as a universal force for good. Relationship of my business to the world. Relationship of me and my heart to the world. How do I do that? So these are all little things that I did here to be able to shift my business in that direction. So let me talk just a little bit about maybe some questions, some process that you can go through, or maybe if you're working with companies that are in transition or wanting to affect the world differently. I break it up into really a step process for me. How was I being true to myself? And how am I being true to myself? And what are my fears? Because my fears were the biggest thing that stopped me from doing what was true and in my heart. I was afraid of being rejected, afraid of standing up and saying, I want to feel a sense of love every day, no matter where I am. And I'm not afraid clearly of saying that anymore, but I had to get over my fear of being rejected from others. And once I got over that fear, I was better. So this is my 3-step process you see right here. And, what are you acting from? What are you trying to do? And what is it that will make you happy internally? Like, what is it inside? So that's the inside world. And then in your outer world, once you get a feel for what that is for you, how do you make that work in the world? What do you need to make that work in the world? And for me, it was about coming from a place of safety. And once I knew that I was safe to be who I was able now to be able to take those values, if you will, and live them inside and outside. And then how do you incorporate that into your corporate culture and every decision that you make? So that was the journey I specifically went through to finally figure out, okay, how am I going to get to the end point? What I feel in summary is that if we cannot begin to take into account the whole, when we're looking at our businesses, whether it's an investment shop, whether it's whatever it is, if we're not looking at the whole and we're not looking how each one of our actions impact not only ourselves, but others around us. And I'm not talking specifically, quotas aren't working. They are not working. We have more tension than we did before. If it was working, we wouldn't have this tension. It's about an internal change. It's about something here that has to change. And the unfortunate thing at this point, I get it. We have markets, we have companies that need to make profits. I understand, for the sake of Wall Street. But at the end of the day, what's more important? What's more important? And I would like to see caring capitalism. I believe it can happen. I believe it's ripe. I think the time is now. More people want change. If you ask many of the leaders, many that I've worked with, they're not particularly happy with how they are presenting themselves in the world and how their businesses are run. I recently had a fantastic call with a PR company, very well-known executive, an executive on the team, one of the actually small owners of the company, who in the conversation with him, he stated to me that he absolutely loved the people he worked with and he loved the work, but he couldn't deal with the he was really unhappy with the culture, and he's one of the owners. So here's a perfect example. We went through his fears and what he was afraid of and why he wasn't stepping forward to say how he truly felt. And I'm happy to say he's advancing. But the point being is, here's an owner who had to tap into the truth of how he was really feeling so that he can make a change in his company. So in the end, I would suggest that maybe as you go through the day, I can leave you with one thing. As you work through your day, gut check yourself to say, is this, and this, I had to do this when I sat in boardrooms, is this right for me? Is this congruent with who I am? And if I'm sitting here and not saying anything, what am I afraid of? Because fear is one of the biggest things that stops us from going in this direction. Fear of standing out, fear of being different, fear of, who knows, retaliation, whatever it may be, being criticized. I would say, if I could leave you with one thing, is to step back and gut check with yourself. I do this with my employees all the time. Gut check, sit with yourself, see how it truly makes you feel. Does it make you mad, glad, sad, or scared? Because those are the four major emotions. Those are the four major feelings. And if you could tap into that, you are now going to start the process to begin to go in the direction of caring for yourself, and therefore caring for yourself, caring for your feelings, caring for your truth, and therefore that'll shine through in your business. And that's where the change comes. So I do hope that this has given you something to think about, something very different, I think, than what many of us have been talking about. And I wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, do feel free to ask. I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Well, Alexandra, this is most interesting. Some people would ask themselves, in talking about this, are you focusing on a sense of empathy more in dealing with others?
Yeah. And you know what, James, empathy starts with self.
Yes.
I think we beat ourselves up more than we even beat up other human beings. I think if one of the most powerful things I've ever done was to go on a silent retreat for 2 days in complete seclusion with nothing, no food, no water, like little water, but nothing, no stimulus. Maybe it was 3 days. And I was paying attention to my thoughts. This was several years ago. I beat myself up more than anybody I could ever beat anybody up. I had no empathy for myself. I had no compassion to my own suffering. So yeah, I think empathy is a very large part of it, but mostly to self. Like, really like yourself. Find a way to see the ways in which you are not being true to you. Because once you like yourself, once you love yourself, everything else is good. Everything else flows.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
you can feel another that way.
yeah, I can get a sense of how important it is, but some might wonder if you look at the S part of ESG, society, DEI, and all these issues, one would ask, in order to see how valuable this is and how well it's going, we should look at what we're really doing in promoting diversity, inclusion, equity, and all that. Because I think it's excellent, but it feels like there should also be a way to express the different features of it so people can understand and make more progress.
Yeah, I think just real raw truths around it are really important too. And I have to agree with you. I think diversity is so important. You know, as a woman who's been on Wall Street, I know what it's like to fight against the tide, right? To swim, but somehow, some way, truth is that the more I got comfortable with me, the more I was going downstream and the river was taking me with it. And I was no longer fighting the tide. So there's some conversations I think that have to be had, and also a change in again, internally, towards self. And I do agree. I think more conversations, more work in this area is very important, but I think it's more of a change that has to come from within ourselves. Because I think sometimes these quotas, I'm seeing people get a little bit bitter, and that is painful to see this for me. So the more I see these quotas being pushed, the more I'm seeing certain comments, and I'm thinking this is so counter to what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Painful.
Very interesting, very interesting. It really creates a new, focus on
Mhm,
oneself,
mhm.
which we never talk about. And, how people are as managers for themselves has a lot to do with the way they treat others.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Well,
mhm, mhm,
excellent.
mhm.
Well, Alexandra, we
Thank
want
you.
to thank you so much for joining us and
Thank
providing such
you.
useful insights. And
Great.
look forward to talking again with you.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye.